can't see the hand. Another edition, Super Bowl edition. At least we know now the matchup for Query and Schultz, the incredibly creatively and appropriately named Query and Schultz program here on ISC Sports Network, brought to you by WGU Indiana. More on WGU later in the program, but my name is Jake Query. That is Derek Schultz. I am basically the Tom Brady of this program, and you are looking right here at the Trent Dilfer of the program in terms of just overall greatness of resume.
That's how we're going to start?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. I'm in a pretty good mood. I'm thrilled to see my friend and do this show.
Okay.
It's the highlight of the week for me, and I didn't know that the first 10 seconds of the show were going to go that way.
There's a lot to talk about, actually, Derek.
For sure.
Besides just making bad analogies about Super Bowl starting quarterbacks, we now know the Super Bowl stage is set. And is the stage opening up for the Colts at the quarterback position? That's something we'll talk about over the course of the next hour or so. Plenty of basketball to talk about. But let's begin with, Derek, as much as I know people in Indianapolis and in this area that are Colts fans don't necessarily want to hear it, it is phenomenal to think that, and I did not think, I will eat crow on this, I thought Tom Brady would have a nice year in Tampa and they'd go 9-7.
Yeah, I thought
and
the
it would
exact
just
same.
kind of start the beginning of a slow fade. And
Wild
yet,
card weekend.
Right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. 10th time in the Super Bowl, which is remarkable. When you consider, I looked up some stuff last night. There are 11 players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that played 8 or fewer seasons. Tom Brady is in his 10th Super Bowl season.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
No, it's more Super Bowls than all of the franchises except for the Patriots at this point. I mean, he'll have appeared in 10, and the Patriots, of course, have appeared in, 11? Because
Correct.
85 and
Correct.
then 96 with those two teams.
Well, no,
that,
they
of
would have
course,
been in 10.
Predated Brady. Well,
No, you're
nine
right,
with
because
Brady.
I forgot the Drew Blitz or the
9 with Brady, then Bledsoe, and then the
Correct.
Eason, Grogan, whatever year that was when they got ragdolled by the Bears.
46-10.
In 85. It's an incredible accomplishment, Jake, and I don't want to say like validation. Tom Brady doesn't need any validation, but clearly things didn't end the way that he wanted them to in New England, and I think there was a little bit of a struggle of egos between two of the greatest to ever do it in the coach, Bill Belichick, and the quarterback. And for the Patriots to have the season that they had and to Brady to have the season and the team success that he's had, it's kind of the last laugh, right? It's sort of not that they're always linked, him and Belichick, I get it, and they're probably going to remain close because they know that their legacies are so intertwined together. But this was a situation where once again Brady wins. That's just what he has spent his career doing.
Does this in any way, shape, or form tarnish the legacy of Bill Belichick?
No, I don't think so. No, because this wasn't just Brady doing this. Obviously, Brady was a big part of the equation, but
their defense is awfully darn good.
It's a very good defense, and he's got great weapons around him. Godwin and Evans and Fournette had an incredible spin move, hit the circle button there on that touchdown run. Even though they didn't have the best rushing day in the world. So, yeah, look, I get it. We're in Indianapolis, and everybody hates Tom Brady, but you can't here's what I'll say. We can have an argument over whether he's the greatest of all time, because I still want to separate team
is there an argument?
And individual.
Is there really an argument?
Yeah, there still is. Like I said, it's subjective. But he is clearly the most decorated quarterback or decorated player in NFL history. It's
How about this,
Bill Russell, Jake. Bill Russell is the most decorated player. He's not maybe the best, or he's arguably the best of all time. And I think Brady is there with him.
Okay, let me throw, and I'm going to look at my phone here because I came up with this last night. In terms of total Super Bowl starts, okay, Joe Namath, 1. Johnny Unitas plus Ken Stabler, 2. Bob Greasy, 3. Bart Starr plus Len Dawson, 4. Dan Marino plus Joe Montana, 5. Drew Brees plus John Elway, 6. Peyton Manning plus Troy Aikman, 7. Roger Staubach plus Terry Bradshaw, 8. Kurt Warner plus Brett Favre plus Jim Kelly, 9. Tom Brady, 10.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it that way, every one of those quarterbacks I just mentioned is in the Hall of Fame that is eligible. And, of course, a matter of time before which one of them. Drew Brees is a matter of time.
Another thing, Jake, is this Super Bowl era has had a lot more parity than in the 80s when it was, the one seeds basically. It was 14-2, 15-1. There was a long span of Brady's career where it was like the 9-7 Giants and the 10-6 Packers and, all these random teams that kind of went to the Super Bowl. So, that's what kind of fascinates me about Brady's career path, because early on he was just kind of there along for the ride. And then when he became an elite quarterback, it took him a long time to get back to winning a Super Bowl again. From 2007 to 2013, Brady was an elite, unbelievable quarterback, and they won 0 rings. And they didn't, I guess, have the fortune that they've had here lately, and now it just feels like every single year he's in it.
Now, one of the great logos in all sports history. I'm not trying to pull a Lee Corso here and say and predict, put on the head of who's going to win the game, but I had to break this out just because this is like an ode to my childhood.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Bucko Bruce.
Bucko Bruce, baby. Mm-hmm. Tell me that's not a great-looking logo.
No, it is. But I like their current one with the skull and
this is.
We got the pirate ship on.
This is
there.
way better than the current logo.
Yeah, it's a great logo. It's an iconic logo. But I like their current logo. I've never been a fan of their uniforms. It's pretty sharp.
Their old uniforms were fantastic.
Well, and the other
problem is they were just absolutely terrible with these.
I think another thing to add to it is that this is an organization that, outside of this flukish 2002 run where they had this all-time defense, really has done nothing for 40 years. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are, if you take out 2002, they're the Jets, the Browns.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of the bottom tier NFL franchises, and they've been an afterthought for the last 20 years, and then Brady gets there, and boom, suddenly they're back in the Super Bowl again. So I think that's another thing that just kind of adds to the allure of it. But, what was interesting about yesterday's game was the dropped interception right before halftime, the flag late, which I think was the correct call, albeit a late call. Brady has the knack, and his teams have the knack for good fortune, and it is what it is. It's sports and all of that, and I'm not diminishing his greatness. He's great, and he's arguably the best to ever do it. But man, I saw a stat yesterday that Brady's teams are 3-1 in the playoffs when he throws 3 picks. The margin for error for him generally has been much wider than it has been for Drew Brees or for Aaron Rodgers or for Peyton Manning's
when it comes
teams.
down to it, Derek, you can't dispute. When it comes down to it, and you have to have smart plays and conservative plays, or whether it be conservative or aggressive, in the last 3 minutes of a game, in key moments, he's pretty darn good. He knows how to get it done.
Yeah,
obviously.
More often than not. I mean, yesterday's not the greatest example of that because they dragged that thing to the finish line on fumes.
But still,
but they did win. Yeah, I mean, he played a great half of football. First half, he was real sharp and made a couple of great throws. Second half was kind of a disaster, but you survive and advance, and that's what they did.
Now, Nick Yeoman, I thought, had a great tweet yesterday that is very accurate, saying that this Super Bowl matchup feels like Magic Johnson versus Michael Jordan in the 91 NBA Finals, which is kind of true because Magic Johnson, during his, at that time, Magic Johnson was thought to be one of the 2 best players in basketball, with Larry Bird being the other. Tom Brady and Larry Bird was already kind of fading by 91. Brady now, if he's Magic Johnson, and that would make Peyton Manning, let's say Larry Bird, and now you have coming along this Michael Jordan who's getting ready to take over and take the mantle. Patrick Mahomes clearly is that way. He is now the youngest quarterback to make his 2nd Super Bowl start. I mean, assuming he's going to start the game. But to do so before his 26th birthday, that's never before been done. And look, Kansas City is electric offensively in terms of schematically what they do, opening the field, finding avenues and routes for their runners and their elite-level athletes. But so much of that is predicated upon a quarterback that can – you don't know if he's makeshifting plays or if these rollouts and things that he's doing are by design, but obviously you can't say enough about Patrick Mahomes.
No one has ever had a 3-season stretch, certainly to start a career like he's had, and it'd be hard to find somebody who's had a 3-season stretch like Mahomes has had 2018 to 2020.
Right.
Jake, one of his teams has not lost by more than 1 score since 2016. The last time a Patrick Mahomes team lost by more than 1 score, I think they lost to Iowa State when he was at Texas Tech. They've won 25 of their last 26 games. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And And I think the funniest thing that we do, and we all fall victim to this. I mean, Buffalo was a great story. The funniest thing that we do as sports fans and sports media is that we get tired of storylines. So then it becomes, aren't the Bills the best team right now in the NFL? No, the Bills were never the best team in the league. You know what? We get bored with success.
How many Super Bowls can the Kansas City Chiefs attend before we're tired of them? Right now, they're still favorite. You know, people are like, they're still fun. Andy Reid's a
I think they
fun
get this
character.
one, and that's it. I think it ends after this year.
Right.
Yeah. Because, the other thing that the Chiefs have, and this is not Mahomes related, it's not a likable roster when you talk about some of the off-the-field stuff. And I know some people, I kind of like Kelsey. He's kind of like the new Gronk, but I know some people don't like Kelsey.
They've had some players with some issues.
Oh, yeah. And we don't need to, legislate that here, but you guys know what that is. I've always really liked Andy Reid, and since I like Andy Reid and I like Mahomes, that's what's added to their likability to me.
They pointed this out in the broadcast, and I thought it was interesting that not more was made of it because it's truly a remarkable stat. Only 2 franchises have ever hosted 3 consecutive conference championships. Both of them were coached by Andy Reid.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Because the Eagles did it in the early 2000s.
I don't know if you'd say it's wild as much as clearly it shows this guy can flat out coach, right?
Yeah, if they win a coin flip in 2 years ago, then this is their 3rd straight Super Bowl, and they're probably going for a three-peat because I think they beat that Rams team, but, it is what it is. You lose the coin flip and over. That was a game. You watched that game, right? Chiefs-Patriots. Whoever got the ball was going to march down the field and score. Right. There was no doubt about it. So that game essentially was decided by a coin flip.
Okay, we've buried the lead here, though, Derek, because this is Indianapolis, and the Colts are obviously topic A anytime you're talking about the NFL in this town. And now there seem to be, all of a sudden, an opening up of possibilities for quarterback. We know definitively that Phillip Rivers is not coming back. He is retiring. That is not a huge surprise. So the question becomes for Indianapolis, who is the guy next year? A couple of possibilities. Number one, we know that Matthew Stafford wants out in Detroit, and they are going to trade him. Now, what I've said is this, and tell me if this makes sense. What Chris Ballard needs to determine, what Phillip Rivers did was he showed the Colts what they are with good quarterback play. Because he had a good year. He was a nice, solid, reliable quarterback. So if you take this past season as your baseline, okay, with a quarterback, so let's say that you evaluate Phillip Rivers and you say, okay, if we're scoring every position, Phillip Rivers was a 7. If you deem Matt Stafford to be a 9, okay, so we're going to take everything that we have. We're upgrading 2 points at the quarterback position. But are you costing yourself more than 2 points in what you need to give up to get him? Because he's going to have to be traded. He's not a free agent. You got to trade for him, even if they're wanting to do a trade. And Detroit's going to have offers. So what do the Colts have to give up? And is what they are giving up less than what they are improving from last year to this to get them to the next level? Aaron Rodgers may also be a possibility that's on the market. There's a possibility now that maybe he wants out in Green Bay and they would be willing to trade him. They have Jordan Love, but I would imagine it would take a king's ransom to get Aaron Rodgers. You have Jacob Eason on the roster who has yet to take a snap. That was last year, of course, a rookie. And then there are other names out there that, I don't know the contractual status of a Ryan Fitzpatrick or
Derek Carr, Matt Ryan,
guys like
Darnold, Wentz, the guys that we have discussed.
Right. Your thoughts on what the Colts do here?
Yeah, I think Stafford makes a lot of sense. He's about to turn 33. He'll turn 33 the first week of February.
You're looking at what, a 4 to 6 year window of probably very high level play, right?
Yeah, well, I think you're definitely looking at a window of 2 more prime years and then probably 2 or 3 more Phillip Rivers type years after that. And he's under contract for 2 more prime years, and it's a very team-friendly deal. So I think it makes the most sense. I think he can come here and win right away. I think the Lions are going to allow him to have a say in where he goes because they feel like, hey, you gave us 10 years and we both want to get this done, so let's go ahead and help you with this. So in that case, it makes a lot of sense. I would think that 2 1s would get it done or a 1 and a 2. And if you're the Colts, you got to be thinking to yourself, okay, well, let's say it's this year's 1. That's 21. And next year, we expect to be in the playoffs with Stafford. So that's another, 25, 26. You're talking about late first-round picks. I don't think that's too much of a price to pay. Now, if we're talking Watson or Rodgers, then you're going to have to put together a ton of picks and probably some players in order to get those guys. And I don't think that's going to happen with Stafford. So, he's a guy that has been unfortunately tethered to this losing organization, but as recently as 2019 played at a top 5 to 7 quarterback level.
If, Derek, and this is a big if, okay? So hear me out. If Aaron Rodgers is available, in other words, if it comes out that Aaron Rodgers, and we're reading tea leaves here, by Aaron Rodgers' comments after their loss, people assumed all of a sudden the insinuations there, maybe Aaron Rodgers is available. I don't know whether he is concretely or not. I don't know that the Colts would be in the running for an Aaron Rodgers. But if Aaron Rodgers is on the market, that helps the Colts get Stafford, in my opinion, because the teams that have a lot of capital to go after Matt Stafford are probably going to shift that now and instead pursue Aaron Rodgers.
Well,
and I think it lowers the price of Matt Stafford.
I thought you were going to mention the most obvious team that is looking to upgrade a quarterback where Rodgers would be a natural marriage because he's from there or from that area, and that's San Francisco.
Right.
Who could have had him, of course, way back when in whatever year he was drafted. I think it was 05 because he and I are the same age. I feel for Rodgers a bit. And, I didn't send this tweet last night because I think people were going to misinterpret it. But I thought to myself, isn't it funny that for years we dragged Peyton Manning for playoff failures, right, and falling short? Jake, Aaron Rodgers has played in 1 Super Bowl in 13 seasons. Yeah. 1. And he's been the best quarterback in the league for how many of those 13 seasons or one of, well, certainly one of. He's been basically for all of those seasons, but he's probably been the best quarterback in the NFL for 6 or 7 of those seasons. And yet, it's only 1, and that's what ends up happening. I think what Rodgers is protected by was Rodgers hasn't had the massive clunkers like 41-0 to the Jets and 43-8 in that Super Bowl that some of Manning's teams had, but really, I think it reflects that it takes more than just elite quarterback play, and I hope that if people are really hard on Manning's legacy, I hope they'll look at Rodgers as an example why it can't just be looked at in a vacuum.
I guess I haven't followed closely enough his health status, but a guy that, to me, that it's interesting that all of a sudden now there's this assumption they're moving on from that I think's a nice young player is Garoppolo.
Yeah,
I thought he had a nice year. I mean, I know he got hurt.
I think
but prior to the injury, I thought he was a nice, solid player.
Yeah, but nice and solid, is that good enough when you always want to upgrade? I think there was a feeling that Jimmy Garoppolo could have the growth that Josh Allen had, where, okay, there's something. Josh Allen, early on, you could see that there was something there because he had these he has this amazing arm and these physical attributes. So you thought, okay, if he can just improve, and then Allen just just shot up like a rocket from year 2 to year 3. And Garoppolo, you're right, with the injuries, maybe that short-circuited, but that never really materialized for him.
Allen, a lot of people talk about for Jacksonville, who we're going to see plenty of when he gets with the Jags. Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback out of Clemson, who was going to be the number 1 player taken in the draft, has a Josh Allen-type skill set in the fact that he can run the ball if he has to. And that's what makes Allen, you know what I mean? They do designed run plays for Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the way he can throw across his body and put touch on it, that's what you're going to see out of Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. The division, if Deshaun Watson stays there as well, it's important for the Colts to get themselves a good quarterback because there's plenty of good quarterback play within the division. I'm not a huge Tannehill guy, but when you have Derrick Henry behind you.
Well, and that's something else that I think the Colts need to factor in with this decision and what really was the number 1 limitation with Rivers. And Rivers is an extreme example because he can't move. He can't.
Right.
Like, there's mobile, there's immobile, and then there's Phillip Rivers. You know what I mean? Phillip Rivers might as well have been sitting in a lawn chair when he would drop back.
Sitting in a lawn chair.
He cannot move.
The aluminum kind?
So
the recline back?
I'd be lying to you, Jake, if I said that I had
ribbons like is the back?
Really watched a ton of Matthew Stafford. I think he can get out of trouble. Like, I don't think Matthew Stafford is as mobile as everybody else, but that's clearly what teams are going to weigh here moving forward. And you look at all these guys coming out, Fields and Lawrence and everybody, all of those guys can move. And, Rodgers is a great example of a guy that we never talked about as being a mobile quarterback, but got out of trouble all the time.
Derek, I'll be honest. in conclusion, to wrap it up, I think Matthew Stafford has got a big arm. He's clearly a talented guy. He's an upgrade from Jacoby Brissett. He's an upgrade because of the years on Phillip Rivers. But Detroit's had some pretty big offensive weapons around him, and what did it get him? Are you going to be able to build a better talent around Matthew Stafford?
They made the playoffs, a couple of those years, and they got kind of robbed in a game against Dallas. But I hear you. Look, Matthew Stafford, just like Rivers, is no guarantee. You know what I mean? The Colts, but this is the point, Jake. You have to take that risk. You can't play it safe here. And I was having a discussion on Twitter over the weekend because Ballard and Reich insist on keeping Jacoby Brissett in this discussion, which to me is totally ridiculous. But somebody like that is playing it too safe. You know what I mean? You have to at least take the risk that you're trying. And if you went back to Brissett for a third time.
Brissett contractually is where?
Was a free agent.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. So it's not like you're building trade capital in him. You know what I mean? Like if he had a year left on his deal and they're saying, well, we think Jacoby might still be the guy, maybe you're saying that because –
Well, I think they're saying that because they don't want to nuke his value to other teams either. You know what I mean? They like Jacoby Brissett. Right. Like I'm not saying they're lying about that, but the Colts, when they say that they're weighing him as a starter, Jake, it would have to be after option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 all failed. Like Jacoby Brissett would be your last ditch. I need to take somebody to prom on the morning of prom.
He's the best. Well, that's how you
person.
That's how you got there, right?
Oh no, I asked Nicole early in the process.
Yeah. What about Katie Koleski?
I also asked her early in the process.
How'd that work out?
That did not work out.
Okay. But at any rate, if all you ever needed was 4th and 1s, Jacoby Brissett is Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, and I think Brissett's a great teammate and a leader and a great guy, and I don't mean to be like the anti-Jacoby Brissett person, but they paid a 38-year-old $25 million. If they believed that Brissett was their guy, he was under contract at $15 million for next year. Wouldn't they have made him the starter in 2020, right?
By the way, we have more to get to, including kind of a yin and yang in Bloomington. I'll explain what I mean by that, and does college basketball have something that might be in the balance kind of teetering there? I got a feeling that it may be. Derek, you seem more passionate about that opinion than I. So we'll explain what we're talking about, and we'll get to that. Indiana, Purdue, and the world of college hoops. It's next here on Query and Schultz on ISC.
Farmers provide us with safe, pure foods for our tables. A responsibility that takes intuition, resolve, and determination to make sure their milk is good for you and delicious to taste. Their connection with our community runs deep, passed down through the generations, ensuring that milk is always available at your store. It's not easy being a dairy farmer, but the rewards have special meaning when you can feed Indiana's families every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
You can't get enough of them.
You can't get enough of us. Good one, J-Man.
This is the worst scandal. This
is worse than steroid. Not so fast.
Are you going to watch the XFL?
I'll probably watch a little bit of it.
You want to go through and pick some games?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I really don't. Oh, my God.
We are ripping fast today.
And how hard can it be, right?
These are now selling for about $3,500. So we're back to our old ways of pulling rocks.
Act like idiots on camera, open cards, and talk about the hobby.
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. High school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
Welcome back. Corey and Schultz rolling along here. Thanks so much for joining us on ISC Sports Network. I'm Derek Schultz. Jay Query here as well. This segment of the show brought to you by our friends at Wood Warbler Coffee.
Man, it smells good.
Got 2 bags here. Got the 11 blend, which is great for Indy 11. Also, of course, in my left hand, this is the heavy hitter, the cleanup hitter of Wood Warbler's lineup. Hot cup of Schultz. Got a nice hot bag here in my hand. You can go check out any of their coffee stylings. What do you have over there? Do you have the bird song?
Hot cup of Schultz.
Okay.
And Eyes of the World, the espresso blend.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Any of those you can get woodwarblercoffee.com. It's really important right now to support local coffee while we're still in the midst of this pandemic. And Jeff and his group over there do a great, great job. It's delicious coffee. You can get it ground like this, or you can get whole beans. Well, it doesn't really. We'll have to do this. If people are listening to the podcast, I want them to know that I'm shaking it.
Here, let me do it for you.
It just
Wood
smells,
Warbler, Warbler, Wood Warbler coffee.
It just smells really, really good.
Wood Warblers are actually little birds, the mascot, which is beautiful that you are partnered
I
up
like
with
little
a
birds.
bird-friendly place.
Little non-threatening birds are okay, but the smell of the coffee is amazing. I went to
It is
Jeff's
great.
and I just he was actually making a big hot sack, a Schultz, and I smelled the sack, and it was unbelievable.
Roasted right on site, right there in
That's right.
Opusville.
Yep.
Indiana, Derek, everybody got excited, and this seems so par for the course for Indiana basketball the last seemingly 15 years. They had a great win at Iowa. It was only the second time that they've beaten a top 5 team on the road in a true road game
I saw your
since
tweet.
the mid-'90s.
Yeah.
They beat Michigan State a couple of years ago when Michigan State was 4th. You got to go all the way back to the Fab Five, the last time that they were able to do that. Granted, this year is a true road game. I get it.
I hear you.
But Iowa's a darn good team, and Indiana played lights out in the second half of that game and just pulls away from Iowa. Trace Jackson-Davis continues to play at a high level. They then, seemingly they got good contribution off the bench from Geronimo. Armand Franklin is kind of finding his way as a complementary piece in the backcourt. But the consistency elsewhere continues to plague Indiana to the point where it's just same old IU of the last 15 years where it's one step forward and then maybe not 2 steps back, but 1 step back. Losing to Rutgers, come on, you got to get that game.
Okay, you have to get that game. 100% agree. I think Rutgers is good. Rutgers hadn't won all month, so Rutgers had not played well in 2021. But when I've watched Rutgers this year, I've been impressed. I was impressed with their win against Purdue. They played really well in a game against Illinois earlier in the season that I watched. I think Rutgers is better than people. The Big Ten really is tough. But
So
Jake,
you're giving them the S, Rutgers.
I am.
Okay.
Their basketball team was ranked in the top 15 at one point this year. But Jake, you have to string something together if you're IU. And these wins against Iowa or whoever else, they don't mean anything if they don't result in then going on a run.
Correct.
And Indiana can't string anything together. Purdue beats Michigan State, and then they come back and they beat IU, and then they beat Ohio State. They strung it together. Indiana hasn't been able to string anything together for really the last 4 years under Archie Miller.
Now, Purdue that you mentioned, now what we know is, Purdue gets beat by Michigan. Indiana's game with Michigan is obviously going to be postponed because there's a real problem going on here, Derek, with Michigan athletics. And that's not to pick on Michigan, but Michigan has said their athletic department for 2 weeks shelved because of a COVID outbreak at the University of Michigan Athletic Department. You can't assume that this is going to be isolated to just Michigan. And, Michigan coming off of a game with Purdue, does that mean that now all of a sudden Purdue's going to have to test and we're going to wonder what happens with Purdue? And then does that become – I feel like, and I don't want to be pessimistic and be an alarmist or anything else, but there is this weird feeling, Derek, that college basketball might be kind of hanging in the balance here. And as we get a couple of months out from March Madness that's going to be here in Indianapolis, I have concerns.
Yeah, I have concerns too. But you know what? College football hung by a thread all year, and we got that season in. I think the difference is that it's only once a week that you're traveling, if you're traveling at all. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bigger roster. So, there are some challenges. There's some give and take, football
and I don't know
basketball.
this. Part of me just feels like, I don't know that this is the case, but it seems to me, or I feel like, when college football was getting going and off and running, a lot of the campuses were still at that point online. People weren't on campus. Now you're getting more and more of kids coming back, and then you have, the coming back from winter break where there have been intermixing. I mean, there are certain places, and I'm not trying to get into some sort of political discussion on whether or not COVID needs to be taken seriously and masking and look, it's a whole. I get it. It's a divisive and political hornet's nest that you can get into, but the reality is there are certain things that appear to increase the likelihood that you're going to have a spread of actual cases. And those variables seem to be more during the era of college basketball, or the time period, than it was for college
It's just
football.
tougher with college kids compared to pros, because pros, it's your job, and so you have to do exactly what I say. These kids have other stuff going on and girlfriends and whatever else. It's just a whole different kind of set of circumstances as far as that's concerned. But honestly, Indiana, you don't want it to be this way because you don't want a COVID breakout to cause this. But Indiana catches a major break by not having to play Michigan, and I'm assuming, Jake, that game is just going to get bagged.
That's probably right.
That's my assumption at this point, and that's probably a better thing for Indiana here moving forward. But it's just frustrating because this team has basically been the same team for the last couple of years, and yes, they had that great performance against Iowa, and they really defended unbelievably well. But Iowa going 10 minutes without a basket is equal parts fluke as it is defense. I mean, they score 93 or 92 points a game. For them to go 10 minutes without a basket is just, it's an outlier. It's a crazy amount of time to go without a made field goal. So, yes, I give Indiana credit for that, but there were some things that happened in that game that were just outlier things. And you have that over the course of a season. You have an outlier game that you win, and Remember when Indiana won at Michigan State in the midst of losing like 13 of 14 a couple of years ago? What was that, 2 years ago under Archie? Like, it was this weird outlier performance in the middle of a big losing streak.
Here's the reality, and I know that like Purdue fans are going to say, like, why are they talking so much about Indiana? I get it, but Indiana basketball is still one of the marquee programs or marquee teams in this state. The reality is, I don't know that Indiana basketball, Derek, during the heyday of Indiana basketball, and let's be honest, that was the Bob Knight era. I mean, plain and simple. But from 1972 to the early 90s, a 20-year stretch, Indiana benefited from the fact that if you were one of the top players in the state of Indiana, Cincinnati, Chicago area, that area, Indiana, if Bob Knight was recruiting you, that was big time. That was like oh my gosh, like it was almost to the point where it wasn't that Indiana went out and recruited the best players. The best players recruited Indiana because the true feather in the cap is Bob Knight wants me to play for him. Now, since the time towards the end of the Knight era where recruiting started to drop off and, things just changed, a number of variables came into play that changed the face of college basketball, the complexion, the tone, the direction of college basketball. Along with that, other programs, Xavier, Cincinnati, obviously Kentucky and Louisville speak for themselves, Michigan State, Ohio State, for that matter. Other programs came, Butler.
Michigan's become an elite program now. I know they were great in the 90s and late
80s.
So
so now, in addition to that, as I've talked about before, in the 80s, kids, by and large, for the most part, stayed within, their home confines. It meant something to represent, whether you were from Illinois or Indiana or Ohio, it meant something to represent like a close-to-home school. I'm from Indiana, so I'm going to go to Indiana because it says Indiana. Well, now kids are playing in AAU basketball, and they're doing travel teams, and by the time they're 17 years old, they've played on 6 different summer league teams in 22 different states. They've had games, and it's a lot more transient to kids. So the variables of trying to establish that dominant foothold for Indiana are not necessarily there like they were 25 years ago. in addition to that, now that's not to say that they can't have like a Butler, like a Purdue, like an Ohio State, a Michigan State, have their eras of really good players that come in, and every 3 or 4 years they are a top 5 team. But the other thing that comes into play is the shoe company influence on basketball. And Indiana forever was a Converse school when Knight was there, and then Adidas, and then they did Converse for a little bit, but an Adidas school. But when the shoe companies really started to influence where players are going, and they do, I don't care, that whole investigation kind of went by. It just kind of disappeared into thin air. But Indiana is not one of the primary Adidas schools. When Adidas has players that they want to send somewhere, their Louisville and Kansas get pecking order 1 and 2. And for the Nike schools, it's Kentucky and I think Duke is a Nike school.
Carolina.
And Michigan
with
State.
Jordan brand, I guess.
Yeah.
Nike, it's kind of a marriage.
Yeah,
but.
Carolina's the Jordan brand. But and then you have the UCLAs and the Auburns that were with Under Armour for like an 18-month period when Under Armour was really cool, and now Under Armour's like champion, which I guess is making kind of a comeback.
But all this, Jake, speaks to recruiting, and specifically in the Archie Miller era, recruiting hasn't been the problem for IU. It's been developing talent.
That's fair.
And really, they've had 3 straight Mr. Basketballs. And even for Crean, I don't think that Indiana didn't get talent. I think the problem is that it wasn't consistent. It was some classes you'd have Grant Galen, and then some classes you'd have Victor Oladipo or Cody Zeller or somebody like that is in there. So I don't think Indiana's had a talent problem. I think really what they've had post Night, and everybody knows this, is a coaching problem.
Well,
where you've had a clearly defined ceiling on all of these coaches. Mike Davis is a good guy, a decent coach, but not to the level that Indiana wants. Tom Crean is a good coach, not to the level of Indiana wants. Archie Miller is a whatever coach, not to the level of what Indiana wants.
Indiana, I think right now with Archie Miller, maybe they're in the situation, Derek, that they learned from Purdue. There were years, a lot of people forget this, with Matt Painter, there were people early on that were like, I don't think he's the guy. And now look at, Matt Painter can flat out coach. You know exactly what Purdue's going to be year in and year out. They get better as the year goes on. Every year in March that Purdue is going to be better than they were in December, and they're going to evolve, and they're going to hone in, and they're going to be really tough. But you had to wade through some early years with Painter to find that consistency, even though I realized the baby boilers. But there were calls about Painter early on. Now, Archie Miller, do you ride this out and let him grow to the point where then it's like, look, that's the guy. That's the guy. Or does Indiana say, look, we got to cut bait and move on? And if so, who's the guy?
Yeah,
who is the coach?
I have felt all along, even though I'm very, very lukewarm on Archie, that it would be at least next year. So, and that would be 5 years because this is year 4. Barring a disastrous finish this year, and I don't think Indiana's going to go in the tank. I think Indiana's going to struggle to even make the NCAA tournament.
Correct.
But I don't think they're going to be, a total disaster. I don't know.
Derek, by Indiana standards, not making the NCAA tournament is disaster.
But they haven't. They've consistently not made it for 20 years.
I understand.
You know
it's
what
crazy.
I mean? It's old hat now.
They've been, as a matter of fact, in the last 15 years,
they've missed it more than they've made it.
They've made more bowl games than tournaments, right?
I don't think it's that.
Maybe it's
extent.
10 years.
Maybe in the last 10, because then you would include some of the early Crean years when he was still kind of gaining his footing. But I remember, Jake, I was a junior at IU. The A.J. Moye, George Leach senior year, and they were 14 and 15, and they missed the tournament for the first time since season on the brink. And it was a crisis that they weren't going to play in the NCAA tournament. Everybody was like, oh, my God, this hasn't happened in 20 years. And now it's just like, yeah, okay, Indiana's a 3 seed in the NIT. All right, cool. There's another game I can ignore. You mentioned people saying, why don't you guys talk about Purdue? We don't talk about Purdue. It's a compliment because I know exactly who Purdue is.
Right.
Game to game, I have no idea who Indiana's going to be. I know who Purdue is because they have an identity and they have a culture and they develop their players and they do all these things that Indiana doesn't do.
And Purdue's now getting – we talked about last show, Derek, that Trevion Williams, clearly the team has shifted. It is Trevion Williams is their guy, right? Mm-hmm. But they're getting good contributions from young players.
Yeah, their young players are just way farther along than where Indiana's players are. Even though I do think, we've mentioned Christian Lander's name. He knocked down a couple of shots and actually looked pretty decent against Rutgers. I think Indiana's problem is they're held back by their upperclassmen guards. Finney and Durham, more often than not, stink. And when they stink, it's really hard for Indiana to overcome that and win.
Finney and Durham, more often than not, stink.
I'm so disappointed in Finney. I really thought he was going to be like a good frontline player for them.
He's a solid player.
No, he's not even solid, man. He's a very mediocre college basketball player.
Well, I think you knew pretty early on what the ceiling was going to be for him. But a 4-year college player.
I mean, I thought he'd be able to hit open shots.
Well, okay, that's fair.
I expect my guards to hit open shots.
I looked at one of these websites, I don't know, NBADraft.net or one of them, has Lander as a lottery pick next year. And I'm like,
wow.
Based on what?
Yeah, I mean,
based on the way he played AAU basketball when he was 14.
He's a talented kid. It's just going to take
and he
some
may be,
development.
I mean,
he should be a senior in high school.
He may turn into a really good college player, but I mean, to just say that he's ready for the NBA,
yeah, that's a little.
Give me
much,
12
probably.
minutes against Michigan State first, right?
I hear you.
We've got things to get to next, right?
We got features to get to. We've got our Winners Drink Milk, Winner of the Week, American Dairy Association Indiana. We've got our Love HVACs, Love That Play.
Put my Bucko Bruce hat back on.
Also, a couple of Twitter things.
I'm not a Bucks fan.
On,
I just love the logo.
And a big victory in the Schultz household.
Oh, really?
Which we'll get to. Actually, doesn't really involve me. It does involve me in the fact that my teachings led to this moment.
The dog's doing new tricks? That dog loves me.
That dog is just I love Ollie, but he's the worst. He's just the worst dog. He's a very bad dog.
Really?
Yeah. He hates all living things except
me,
the immediate family,
I came over to the house
and
once
my parents.
He loved me.
Yeah, he liked Jake for some reason. He hates everybody.
Okay.
But it has nothing to do with the dog. It has to do with my son. So we'll talk about that as well. It's Corey
right.
and Schultz. Stick around. ISG Sports Network, plenty to get to.
Indiana Dairy Farm, long workdays stretch into more labor after sunset. A newborn calf needs watching, barn needs cleaning, tractor needs some handiwork for tomorrow's tasks. Just like in your own home, the day's chores are never done until the family beds down for the night. Dairy farmers and their families share the same dream with all of us, that what we all do is worthwhile. Bringing to market pure, safe, and healthy dairy foods is what they do, from Indiana's dairy families to ours every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
You're watching Query and Schultz on the ISC Sports Network.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
Oh my God!
We are ripping fast today.
And how hard can it be, right?
These are now selling for about $3,500. So we're back to our old ways of pulling rocks.
Act like idiots on camera, open cards, and talk about the hobby.
Sports Network brought to you by WGU Indiana. And don't forget, ambition never rests. And, of course, that's exactly why our friend Sage, the owl, is the mascot for WGU. WGU is Indiana's largest and best online accredited university, indiana.wgu.edu. And the best thing about it, folks, when you're talking about the online degree from WGU is the fact that not only do they have a number of different degrees in which you can pursue, but you do so at your own schedule. That's the important thing. So whether you still have kids that you got to deal with, or deal with is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Tend to is probably a better way of saying it.
Do is actually a good way to put it, to be totally honest with you.
Or work, responsibilities. When it comes down, maybe at the end of the night, maybe early in the morning, whatever it might be. Work at your own flexibility, your own schedule. That's one of the great advantages of WGU. Again, indiana.wgu.edu, a sponsor of this program, and we appreciate that very, very much. Derek, Pacers got off to a great start on the season. At one point, they had a chance to try to put themselves in position to have the second-best overall record in the league, 12 games in. Slid back just a little bit here. Malcolm Brogdon with, quite frankly, a day after hitting a big shot for the Pacers. Really kind of a clunker over the weekend. Sabonis is continuing to, he plays fantastic. Miles Turner, the hand injury hurt him a little bit. We saw how important he is. But I do think that the Pacers, perfectly adequate, but again, this is what we've kind of come to know, right? Like that 4-7 in the East.
Yeah.
Where is Indiana?
They're fine. I mean, they're fine. I'll be really interested to see what happens with this LeVert situation because they need somebody to fill that role. Basically they traded Oladipo and they've never replaced him at this point, right?
Right.
So it was a team that felt like, and don't get me wrong, I'm totally on board with them trading Oladipo. It was the right decision for them to make, but it felt like they were making some progress, and then they backtracked a little bit by making that LeVert trade and then the mass, and we hope everything from a personal standpoint is good for him first and foremost, more than him as a player. But yeah, Jake, I mean, honestly, and this is a little time sensitive because we're taping this on Monday and they're in the midst of a home and home with Toronto.
Right. And Toronto in game 1 of that home and home, look, I mean, Toronto's pacing
shorthanded
offensively.
Toronto.
Yeah, but I mean, Toronto
well
seized
coached.
control of that game, and like I said, that was Brogdon's worst performance of the year. And I think that we now see that the Pacers kind of go, not as Brogdon goes because Sabonis is their key offensive cog, but Brogdon is their pace setter.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's off, it's difficult.
Yeah, and just a side note about specifically Sunday night's game, which is what we're talking about, OG Anunoby drops 30, and to me, the two biggest Pacer draft misses since I've been covering the team were 2009 when they needed a point guard desperately, and they took Tyler Hansbrough, who was a very limited player who was never going to be more than a bench NBA player, and they passed on Lawson and Collison and Teague and all these guys that ended up having
Holiday wasn't
really,
was Holiday one of them?
Drew Holiday all ended up having really nice NBA careers, and who really under weird circumstances most of them became Pacers at one point, including Collison and Lawson. And the second one is I think it was very obvious that Anunoby was worth a flyer where the Pacers were at 18, and they took TJ. It was 18, right, or 17 or 18, whenever they took TJ Leaf. Who ended up just, not being able to play dead, unfortunately.
Play dead.
Yeah.
Well, nobody'd be able to play dead.
Well, it's just kind of a saying that you have.
No, but it makes no
he
sense.
can't play. He can't even play dead.
Nobody can play dead.
No, play dead like a dog.
No, but you would say, I mean, he
play dead.
The test is how someone plays when they're alive.
Jake, it's just a saying, okay? It's
But
like ragdoll. It's just a saying. Like you don't need to.
Nobody says ragdoll.
You don't need to look into it that deeply.
Nobody says ragdoll. You know that, right?
TJ Leaf can't play, so you
I haven't even looked. Is he
drafted a guy that can't play.
They traded him to Oklahoma City,
and then he got released.
I was going to say, is he out of the league altogether?
I don't know if he got picked up by anybody else. I mean, he was going to get released by the Pacers, so they actually ended up getting some savings on that deal. But let me look to see if he is on the roster.
The player that the Pacers
Which is
received
too bad
in
because
that
he's a
trade,
nice dude,
right? What's the name of the kid that they received in the trade?
LeCue.
That's right.
He's still on the roster.
He is.
Yes.
Super athletic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching a preseason game and talking with a friend of mine who is within the areas of knowing the NBA very well. And I said, this guy looks pretty good. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, he just made a super athletic play. And they said, well, keep watching. I said, what do you mean? They said, you've seen his ceiling. He's very athletic, but he's got a long way to go. He's very raw. Talking about LeCue. And then as time went on, you're like, oh yeah, so maybe he's not a great wide open shooter. Oh yeah, wait a minute. He kind of didn't know what to do there defensively. But he's got something you can't teach, and that's athleticism.
Well, and
it's
now
like a flyer, right?
Yeah, now the Pacers have a couple of those guys because the kid that they drafted out of Duke is kind of in that same
Stanley,
predicament
right?
where he is an unbelievable athlete that
right.
you can't teach, but you have to basically teach him how to play basketball. And, unfortunately for TJ Leaf wasn't a great athlete or a great basketball player.
But a guy that's kind of paid off for them? I'm not saying that he's, a world beater. But look at Edmund Sumner.
Yeah.
Who, they've been really patient on. He spent a lot of time in the G League. He's turned into – he's never going to be like the guy for them. I'm not saying that. But he's a nice rotational player.
No, for sure.
Gives them quality minutes when they need it.
And I don't want to just be like.
Did TJ Leaf, did you look him up?
Yeah, he's not with an NBA team right now. And I don't want to just be like doom and gloom, like Pacers apathy guy. I think they're fine. And what's noticeable about this year's East is that there is really no runaway team. Brooklyn is just kind of treating this, I think, as whatever. I think Brooklyn's just looking at this as the dress rehearsal for what's about to happen for them. But, Philly, Milwaukee doesn't look as good as I thought they were going to look. Boston's whatever. Boston's about what you'd expect them to be. I'm just looking at the standings right now.
Boston's got a ton of talent, though, man. Jaylen Brown, I'm telling you.
For sure. And then you've got some teams that have been kind of a little bit of a surprise, like what Cleveland's done so far. You know who actually looks competent?
New York?
Yeah. The Knicks don't look like a bad team. They're not a great team, but they don't look like a complete trash fire.
As is often the case, 6 through 10 is going to be pretty interchangeable.
Yeah.
You're
right about that.
And for right now, that's probably realistically where Indiana is.
Mm-hmm.
In that 6 to 10 range.
How about what Gordon Hayward's done last couple games, dropping 30s?
Yeah.
But you know what? Turner's been so good, and it would have cost you at least Turner to get him, that I'm cool with the Pacers passing on that deal.
I would agree. And also, look, from a health standpoint, Hayward was a bit of a financial risk, right? I mean –
well, and the investment is much larger than what you pay Turner too. So.
Okay, so do we have the milk? Are we doing that next?
Yeah. See, I don't know why we kind of laid out the show during the last commercial break. Greg Rakestraw comes in here and kind of tells us what's going on. So I don't really like this whole. Well, what are we doing now?
Well, Derek, this is what you do in TV. It's called a tease. You lay it out, and then you tease.
Well, that's not a tease. That's that's you asking me what we're doing next. Tease would be you kind of taking the reins.
Clearly, it doesn't matter because the last break I said what we were doing next, and we didn't do it.
You need me.
Segments to get to.
That's really what it is.
Well, no, I was steering the ship, and then you grabbed the wheel and took it in a totally different direction.
You handed me the wheel because you need me.
Yeah, okay.
It's okay. I just want to hear you say it out loud.
No, it's not accurate.
You need, don't say you. I need you.
The latest trend in television, one-man bands. That's the big thing. Everybody's got a one-man band. One-man band right here.
Well,
John, Paul, Ringo, and George right here.
You're acting like that's a big thing to be one man, but what that means is you got to shoot all your own video. You've got to edit all your own stuff. I mean, it's a lot different than just Ed Sorensen rolling up at 10:58 for the 11 o'clock newscast. And
he used to do
just
that,
letting
man.
It fly.
Ed would roll into Channel 6 on 2 wheels, and I'd have to go and prop open the back door as he ran in and sat down on the set.
Editors and photographers and everybody else putting together the packages and all that stuff. It's media in general. It's just a different world than it used to be, unfortunately. Features, when we come back, we're going to chug some milk. We're going to pick some plays. We still got Bite or Bowl Bleep and the big victory at the Schultz household to get to.
Oh, there we go.
It's Corey and Schultz, ISC Sports Network.
Dairy farmers provide us with safe, pure foods for our tables. A responsibility that takes intuition, resolve, and determination to make sure their milk is good for you and delicious to taste. Their connection with our community runs deep, passed down through the generations, ensuring that milk is always available at your store. It's not easy being a dairy farmer, but the rewards have special meaning when you can feed Indiana's families every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. High school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
Welcome back. It's Corey and Schultz, I don't know why I did that.
You sounded like you were at a circus.
Well, that's what I ran our internship program, not only at iHeart, but also at the old ESPN 950 I did late in my tenure there. And I really liked working with interns. But the first thing that I'd always tell them is that when the microphone turned on, just talk. Like, don't ham it up. Because a lot of times I get interns and they'd be like, hey, hi, my name's Steve and I'm interested in being on the radio. Okay, Steve, that's great. Here, let's do a sports update. Hello and welcome in. This is Steve doing the sports update. No, dude, like, don't do that. Just be you. And it's hard because not everybody has kind of like the deep, manly, sexy raspiness of my voice. It's one of the many gifts that the good Lord has given me. So
your voice sounds like what I look like. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's just kind of a mix of just a rugged handsomeness, but also I smoked menthol cigarettes for about 10 years. And I think that's...
So you're telling the interns to go out and get themselves some Newports. Is that what you're saying?
No, please, kids, do not smoke. Okay. Don't. It's a terrible, terrible habit.
So you smoked 10 years of menthol cigarettes, and I'm the one that got a heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about you.
It's that secondhand smoke, Derek. I'm blaming you.
Winners Drink Milk, winner of the week, brought to you by our friends at
Speaking of heart healthy,
Dairy Association
milk
of
is
Indiana. winnersdrinkmilk.com.
Because, Derek, this is basically, we're talking like the entire produce section right here in a bottle, right?
That's right. I have just a straight 2%. Jake's got low-fat chocolate milk. And the best thing about chocolate milk, it's a great post-workout, I was going to say meal. I guess you can't really drink a meal, but just the nutrition of it is amazing for your body's recovery and for muscles. I have the milk facts right here in my right hand. 10 cups of raw spinach, 2 hard-boiled eggs, and an entire banana. That's how much potassium, vitamin A, and calcium you're provided in just that chocolate milk that Jake is drinking.
Wonderful.
winnersdrinkmilk.com to find out more about the best post-exercise drink around and all of the great dairy offerings. I'm a big cheese guy. Like, my daily consumption of cheese is...
Really?
Oh, yeah. My favorite snack is cheese and crackers, and then usually I like to...
What's your cheese of choice?
Have an Italian... extra, extra, extra sharp cheddar is my favorite.
Swiss, buddy.
I like Swiss. My wife hates Swiss, so we don't usually have Swiss in the house. I don't know. She just doesn't like it.
Swiss is unbelievable.
But I love cracker, cheese, and then love Italian cured meats.
Do you like the Gouda?
So I like Gouda,
okay.
But like a salami, prosciutto, little gabagool, something like that.
American? Do you like the American?
And you put it on the... No, I don't like American cheese. I don't like processed cheese. So Provel, American, I don't eat.
Velveeta?
No, do not eat Velveeta.
Okay.
No, it grosses me out.
It grosses you out?
Yeah.
Is Velveeta real cheese?
I think it's 10% real cheese.
So there's some milk in there.
I think the rest of it, I think it's... I think it's some milk, some cheese.
What about that cheese whiz?
Some yellow.
Do you ever eat the cheese whiz?
No, there's definitely no cheese in there. Nothing in there, no.
That stuff's right out of the can. That was so much fun when I was a kid. It was a big
when
treat.
I first got
string
Ollie,
cheese? Do you like the string cheese?
I used to give it to him, and it just grossed me out too much. So then I started giving him easy cheese to my dog. But now we give him Braunschweiger instead because he really likes that. But I like Braunschweiger, too, on a cracker with some cheese. Delicious.
Horrible.
I don't understand. Like it is a prevalent, popular thing. I don't understand why you're so anti-Braunschweiger.
Because it's disgusting? That's why?
There's nothing disgusting about it.
What, like a meat spread?
Yeah. It's just, Jake, it's just a meat paste, so it makes it really convenient because you could put it on crackers, you could put it on bread.
Horrible.
I like
what animal is that?
Off.
The brawn, whatever. What is that?
It's a combination of several animals, mostly of German descent.
Yeah. Raccoon being one of them.
I'm not sure what sneaks in there, but it's delicious, whatever it is.
Okay.
Love me some Braunschweiger.
So winners drink milk from the American Dairy Association. Our winner of the week, Derek, your nominee is who?
How about BA?
It's not bad. Bruce Arians.
Bruce Arians retires at the end of his tenure with Arizona, and he had some health concerns there, and I think he thought to himself, this is it for me. He's nearing 70 years old. Gets talked out of it, goes back to Tampa at the beginning of last year with Jameis Winston. They have to make the kind of a difficult decision, I think, to move on from Winston, and they bring in
number one
Brady.
overall pick in the draft. Yeah.
And here he is in the Super Bowl for the first time as a head coach. So a guy that, obviously as a coordinator, people thought the world of, but for him to get to this stage as a head coach, further validation on, I think, what is going to be a Hall of Fame career, I would think, for Bruce Arians, just given his past as a coordinator and all the success that he's had. So big winner, great dude. Love the hat. Love me some BA.
Yeah, the hat and the
swagger.
Everything about it is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And I had some people ask me, hey, now that he is in the Super Bowl, are more and more Colts fans going to ask the question, how did the Colts not move on from Chuck Pagano and hire Bruce Arians? And fair question retroactively and in retrospect, but Derek, you couldn't – Chuck Pagano had only been there a year.
It's a non-starter. And
What's that?
It's a non-starter, and this is why. Bruce Arians would have never accepted that job. Never.
That's fair.
Would have never.
I mean, the circumstances in which Pagano was sidelined,
he would
right?
have stepped over the guy that brought him in who had cancer to take the head coach.
Right.
He would have never done that.
Well, not to mention you couldn't. Pagano, you still didn't know. You still didn't know who Pagano was at that point.
Well,
right?
and
I don't mean he was a bad guy, but I'm saying Pagano's body of work was still incomplete.
Jake, I remember going to a press conference late in that year where Bruce Arians talked about how they left the light on in Pagano's office the entire time.
Right.
Like, people don't understand. There was never a feeling that Bruce Arians is our head coach. It was always a temporary thing. But the thought that Bruce Arians, or really anybody, I mean, you'd probably do it to me, but anybody with a heart, no pun intended, would step over somebody for that job. He would have never done that.
Okay, my nominee for the American Dairy Association of Indiana Winners Drink Milk Winner of the Week is a guy that actually we've known for a while has a lot of value, and I think the world of his talent, but sometimes it's in absence when you find out just how great someone is. Like, for example, if I had not been able to be here a couple of weeks ago, people would have then realized, like, wow, that guy really is an important part of that show. I'm going to go, Derek, actually with Miles Turner. Because Miles Turner is a guy that has been knocked by so many people because I think that people want to pigeonhole what they want him to be. Well, he's a 6'10" guy that could shoot from the outside, so he needs to be more fleet of foot and have better lateral movement and be a Kevin Durant type player. No, Miles Turner is a guy that maybe this makes him kind of an anomaly or an anachronism in today's NBA, but he is a guy whose contribution comes with what he does defensively. And so much of what Indiana, as the Pacers, want to do is predicated around what Miles Turner brings to them at the defensive end that then kickstarts their offense. You throw in the fact that now he has more of a green light and sets that available to him to shoot the three-point shot. But we saw in his absence with the hand injury that things just really falter from both the rim protection standpoint and the way that they want to move the ball. He is such an important part of the team, and I think that Miles Turner has just kind of deflected out the criticism and just done what he needs to do. And I hope people now realize his value to this franchise.
Yeah, I think he's going to – I was trying to think about this, and this may not be a great analogy, which I'll admit is one of my weak spots, and there aren't many weak spots. I'm pretty well-rounded. I think we're going to look back, and he's going to have like a Marcus Camby type career where I don't know if Miles Turner is ever going to be a star, but you're going to look back and be like, hey, you know what? That guy was a good player and an important player on basically all the teams that he played on.
Right.
And that's who he's going to be. So, he's become such an elite rim protector. It's not all about blocks totals, but the numbers are pretty eye-popping that I think at the very least he's going to be an all-defensive pick finally. But I've been really excited with his growth because I kind of felt like a lot of people that maybe we had already seen the ceiling for Miles Turner. And while I do think that he's never going to grow into the offensive player that we thought 3 or 4 years ago when he was really young, he's just become a really nice, well-rounded player who's going to have a good 12, 14-year NBA career.
Still to get to, love that play. Our favorite play from the weekend or the week, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com. And apparently there is some big news in the Schultz household. And I'm anxiously waiting, sitting on the edge of my seat. It's funny because I brought this chair in, and I only need the last quarter edge of it because I'm so excited about what this news is.
Yeah, see, I'm glad that you're never into the show, so I'm glad that you're into the show.
We'll get to it next on Query and Schultz.
Dairy Farm farmers provide us with safe, pure foods for our tables. A responsibility that takes intuition, resolve, and determination to make sure their milk is good for you and delicious to taste. Their connection with our community runs deep, passed down through the generations, ensuring that milk is always available at your store. It's not easy being a dairy farmer, but the rewards have special meaning when you can feed Indiana's families every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
You're watching Query and Schultz on the ISC Sports Network.
You can't get enough of
You
them.
can't get enough of us. Good one, J-Man.
This is the worst scandal. This might
This
even
is
be.
worse than steroid. Not so fast.
Are you going to watch the XFL?
I'll probably watch a little bit of it.
You want to go through and pick some games?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I really don't.
For final time here on Query and Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Derek Schultz. Jay Query here as well. This portion of the show, including our Love That Play, brought to you by our friends at Love HVAC, now into their second century as a
It's
family-owned
Love Heating and
business.
Air Conditioning, Derek.
Yeah,
Second century. Isn't that amazing?
it's wild. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not going to live that long, or else we could easily squeeze out 101 years of Query and Schultz.
You know, of the 101 years they've been around, I've known them for 40 of them at least, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And that's the thing about, so you say to yourself, how does a company last for that long? Well, it's very simple. You've got to have great product. You've got to have great knowledge of the product. But you've also got to have great customer service and great loyalty to your customers, dedication. That's what you get from Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com. And Derek, we talk about our favorite play from the last time that we convened. And I have my thought process, but I'll let you go first.
I actually thought back to a play that happened the night after the show, the night the show debuted. So this may seem a little bit dated, but it was a great play, an important win, and I love the emotion afterwards. So I chose Jaden Ivey's game-winning three-pointer for Purdue against Ohio State. Because, you know, a guy that had felt like he had let his team down and struggled with his shot a little bit, and to come up and win a game like that as a young player, big boost not only to the confidence, but something that I'm sure he'll remember forever in his Purdue career, and a quad one win for the Boilers, which is important for their NCAA tournament.
Quad
stats.
one win means what?
Quad one is, it's kind of become the new, remember it was RPI, wins against RPI top 50, wins against RPI 100. What they did was they wanted to separate home and road. So they decided, okay, let's put it into quads. So quad one is if you beat somebody on your home court, a top 25 team, on a neutral court, a top 50 team, and on the road, a top 75 team. And obviously, Ohio State safely in the top 75 as a road team.
So the question is, the quad one win, does that mean at the time that you beat them? So in other words, if you beat a team that's ranked 23rd,
it's in the net
and
ratings
then by
too, not the
by
rankings.
the end of the year, they completely fall off the map.
No.
Does that quad one go away?
Yeah.
So it has to be. You've
And it's
got
how you finish the season.
So you need people to uphold their end of the bargain.
Yes. So they need Ohio State not to nosedive, if you will.
Okay.
You know, this happens in college football too, Jake, where, you know, at one point this year, Tennessee was ranked like 13th, and then we realized, hey, wait a minute, Tennessee stinks. So do you get credit for beating them when they're ranked 13th, or do you realize, hey, wait a minute, they were never the 13th best team in the country? I don't know how you weigh that.
You know what? I'm going to go for my and I hate to say this because I know that this is Indianapolis and people are not fans of Tom Brady. So I'll say, as a fan of, to tie it in with our American Dairy Association Winners Drink Milk Winner of the Week, Bruce Arians deciding just before the half in Green Bay that they're going for it. And Tom Brady airing out 31-yard. Tom Brady's now thrown a touchdown pass in the postseason to like 36 different receivers, Derek. And not unlike Peyton Manning, oftentimes it's guys that otherwise you feel like would be working at Menards if they weren't like catching passes
Scotty
from those
Miller.
particular guys.
Yeah,
Scotty
Chris
Miller.
Hogan.
So
Remember
Scotty
that guy
Miller
for a couple
catches a
years ago?
31-yard touchdown,
Yeah.
I think it was. I mean, right in the breadbasket. But right before that happened, Bruce Arians says, we're going for it. We're not going to take a knee. We're not going to take a field goal. Let's go for the score. And, of course, it turns out that essentially was the scoring difference in the game, right? I mean, that was –
Again, aggressive coaches keep winning. Conservative coaches keep losing. This postseason has been what in the world is LaFleur doing kicking that field goal when you're down 8?
Right.
It's because he's scared because they're down 8. And the rationale to me made no sense. You have 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. Worst case scenario, Tampa gets the ball back. Their offense did nothing in the second half. Tampa's offense did nothing. They had an 8-yard touchdown drive.
By going for the field goal, you are delaying being criticized heavily by another 5 minutes. Because, when he kicks a field goal, you think like, okay, well, let's see what happens here. That seems questionable. If you go for it and you don't get it, then you're an idiot right away because he should have gone to the field goal, take the points.
If you're down 7, there's no way you make that decision. You'd go for the touchdown if you're down 7. The only reason he kicked the field goal was because he was down 8. But if you went for 2 the first time, you had to be committed to having to go for 2 again if you missed it, right? And that's not to mention they dropped that 2-point conversion.
I wondered, how far are we from getting a team in the NFL that never kicks an extra point?
Yeah, or just goes for 2 every time.
Goes for 2 every time.
There are probably cases where that might be the smart thing.
Off the top of your head, okay? And this is always dangerous when we try to do live math. Off the top of your head, what % of the time does a 2-point conversion convert?
Well, they've done studies on this, and it's almost exactly a coin flip. It usually ranges in between 47 and 50%.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, it's 33%. Well, okay, 50%, okay? So you score –
yeah, let's just do a round number.
If you score 4 touchdowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
6-8, 6-8. So you've got yourself –
that's still 28.
28 points. Yeah, so it works out. So if you've got to hope that in one of those 2 you beat the law of average and then you're ahead of the curve. But the point being, you miss a 2-point conversion, okay, you come back and you get a 2-point conversion, then it's basically –
it's a wash.
It's a wash.
Yeah,
right.
And that's the feeling. That's why this whole go for 2 down 14 thing has started because of that exact line of thinking.
Right.
And I think something else, Jake, is that extra points aren't 99.9%
anymore. Right, correct.
They're more like, 93 or 90, 92, 93%, probably something like that.
I saw a really interesting point somebody made that said – at some point, some team is going to deactivate their kicker just to not tempt the coach into kicking field goals and extra points. Now, you're going to need them for kickoffs, right?
I would think you would still – I'm not
you
saying –
have your punter kickoff at that point?
And I'm not saying never kick a field goal again. I mean, if you're 4th and 15 on the opponent's 15-yard line, you got to kick the field goal there. So I'm not saying take that part out of it. Yeah.
Isn't there some high school coach in Texas that never punts?
I think that's been done, yeah.
Never punts.
Yeah.
Actually, in high school, typically, you don't see a lot of punting. Who was your high school kicker? Do you remember?
Matt Newsy played at UConn, so he was a good kicker.
Really?
Yeah.
Who was your high school punter?
I don't remember who punted. I think sometimes my buddy Jay, who was the running back, would punt just because it was basically anybody who could kick the ball high up into the air.
Right.
Yeah, so I think he did a lot of
Tom
the time.
Hadley was the punter at North Central a year below me. He had a 75-yard punt at Massillon.
Oh, my God.
I'll never forget it.
Wow.
I was on the call of it. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Josh Nelson was our kicker. And from 30 in, he was good. He's a soccer guy, right?
Yeah, the 2 most emotionally invested teams that I've ever been – the 2 teams that I've been the most emotionally invested in my life were the 1994 Knicks and the 2000 Trumbull High School football team.
And they were what? The Trumbull what?
Trumbull Golden Eagles.
Okay.
Yeah, but you even said you did North Central Radio.
I did.
You got really into the – I went to the LN Homestead game with ISC the other night, and it was 1 versus 2, and the Homestead broadcast team was on the other end, and the kid that was the color guy was doing this when they were shooting free throws to make the game, and I'm like, that was me when I was when I was a senior in high school and all my buddies played on the team.
Adam Alexander
and I wrote for the school newspaper. You know what I mean? I was invested.
Mac Engel and I did football together. Adam Alexander and I did basketball together. Adam Alexander was the kickoff guy for North Central's football team. That was his big contribution.
Wow, he was part of the team. He got a letter, right?
He did. Yep,
pretty cool.
He did.
Ready for Biter Mobley?
I am.
Sorry, just took a truck.
Biter Bull Schultz, the wildly popular and not surprisingly right now unsponsored, right?
Well, yeah, about to be sponsored again.
Okay.
Jake, so Don't get too excited about that. I give a statement. Jake and I go back and forth whether we buy it or it's bull bleep. You guys know this by now. Statement 1. The Kansas City Chiefs will be a 3+ championship dynasty. Buy it or bull bleep?
It's interesting to think that Tom Brady is the guy that now carries the mantle towards trying to stop a dynasty, right? 3 Super Bowls?
Or more.
Over how long a period of time?
Well, I mean, the Patriots did it over 20 years. I'm not saying that their window is going to be that long, but I'm not talking like 3 and 4 years.
I'll buy it. Patrick Mahomes.
Assuming Mahomes plays 12 years there.
Assuming he stays healthy, Patrick Mahomes, one would think, will win 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I think it's a lock, honestly.
So I would say yes.
The only time where this felt like a lock and then it didn't end up being a lock is a team that you covered in St. Louis and the Rams, where it really felt like, they're going to win. They're going to win 4.
Yeah.
And they got back, of course, in 0-1 and lost. And then I want to say in 0-2 they started like 6 or 7-0, didn't they? Or was that 2000?
2000 they started 6-0. And then Warner got hurt.
I think they got back to the playoffs in 0-2 and then fell short.
That sounds right.
The Warner thing fizzled out real quick, and then he looked cooked, and then he kind of had a rebirth in Arizona.
The only is it 3? The only 3 years that Kurt Warner started 16 games, he went to the Super Bowl. And all 3 of them.
Wow. Kurt Warner is actually an interesting trivia question now with Aaron Rodgers losing yesterday. Kurt Warner is the last regular season MVP to play in that year's Super Bowl as a quarterback.
Really?
Yep.
Still?
Yep.
Okay. Derek, the thing about Mahomes, it's not even as much about Patrick Mahomes. What Kansas City is going to have to do is continue to recycle through the elite level skill players that he's getting the ball to.
Yeah.
And, Mahomes, one would think, is going to be playing at this level for another, let's say, 10 years. But the speed of, say, like a Tyreek Hill or, to your point, Kelsey, the strength in which he plays like Gronkowski, those are the ones that you got to stay on top of because it's their elite separation that makes them so difficult.
For sure. Sorry, to win a Super Bowl, because Gannon won in 0-2 and Manning won in 0-9. And then they didn't actually win the Super Bowl those years. 0-7 Brady, so there have been a couple of MVP winners that played in the Super Bowl, but not actually. Sorry, I want to make sure that I got that trivia question right. Yeah, no, I think 3+ for sure, even though, nothing is guaranteed. The Colts will trade for a quarterback this offseason. Buy it or bull bleep?
I buy that. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I buy that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's far more likely than
but here's the
draft,
thing.
right?
I think that the automatic assumption is that when Matthew Stafford, and it came out that he wanted to be traded from Detroit, or that was over, and Detroit said, yes, we are going to trade Matthew Stafford, there are a lot of people that just automatically assumed that the Colts were going to be the only phone call made. There are going to be a lot of teams that are vying for the services of Matthew Stafford. But again, part of that depends on Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers is available via trade or Deshaun Watson, then Stafford drops down a little bit, and his value then decreases just a little bit. So it's not the slam dunk that that Stafford and the Colts is the marriage, but one would think, kind of like when Rivers became available, you just had a feeling
it just made
where
sense.
It was going to end up.
Yeah, because and Rivers, of course, had the ties to Sirianni and who's now the head coach of the Eagles.
Right.
Which is crazy.
And his replacement has been found.
Yeah.
And Matt Bacon, who was quarterback's coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
and ran an offense for the Montreal Alouettes.
Alouette, jonte alouette. Huh? Alouette, jonte boomerang. You remember that song?
I do not.
You don't know that song?
I didn't know you're bilingual.
No, I'm not bilingual, but there's a French song. I think it's.
What about that?
Is it a bird? It's about a bird, I think.
Remember that French flying nun? The
what?
singing nun? The singing nun.
No. I don't know what you're talking
about.
Alouette,
okay.
French song. Hold on. I think it's about a bird.
What?
You don't know this song?
What exactly is an alouette? Do we know that?
I think it's a bird.
Really?
Let me look up. I want to see the English translation.
Montreal's got a football team named after birds. I mean, I guess we have ravens.
I don't know what.
And eagles
Alouette is a Alouette is a popular French language children's song commonly thought to be about plucking the feathers from a lark.
Oh, that's nice. A song about plucking feathers out of a bird.
Jake, Humpty Dumpty is a song about an egg falling over and dying.
Eggs aren't actual living creatures yet.
Well, he has a smiley face and two eyeballs. It's very traumatic.
So you like songs about animal torture?
How have you not heard the song Alouette?
Maybe because I didn't torture animals.
I just don't know how you could grow up and never have heard that song.
Okay.
It's a very, very common song. It's like the ABCs in France.
Okay.
And you've been to France, and I have.
I have been to France. It's wonderful.
Biter Bull Bleep. Last one here. The Bernie Sanders memes have hit their shelf life. Biter Bull Bleep.
I mean, like an hour into it, I was
love it.
so over it. I'm like, enough. Like, and then, somebody comes out with the one of Bob Knight throwing the chair and Bernie Sanders is on it. And so now everyone's got to send that out like we didn't see it immediately. I'm totally over it.
The best one is whatever the Janet Jackson album cover was,
that's
where
good.
she's got the person behind him. That was my favorite one. And the scene in Ghost, where instead of Patrick Swayze, it's Bernie. I just love the mittens. It's so Vermont.
The mitten story is cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah.
He gets them from and he's doing it for a charitable cause. Look, I'm not going to get too political here, but I've always been kind of a big Bernie fan, and I just love like the old like New York cross legs. Like the funniest one that I saw was somebody wrote this could have been an email for the inauguration where Bernie's just sitting there. Like, I thought that was the funniest meme that I saw of the day.
This could have been what?
This could have been done in an email.
Oh, I got you.
Instead of having the pomp and circumstance of the inauguration.
So you had big news on the homestead?
Yeah. So last night, and we've been working on this for a while, and I feel bad. My wife and I have no idea what we're doing. James is our first and only kid, and so we're kind of learning as we go. And the COVID
And James
stuff
is how
has
old?
made things. He'll be 4 soon.
Okay.
But potty training has just been this big process, and luckily, peeing on the potty, he's really taken to. We haven't had problems with that in a long time, in months. But for whatever reason, pooping has been a little bit more difficult.
What the hell are you talking about?
So I read a potty training book, Oh Crap Potty Training, which is great, and it was a little graphic, but it gave me some tips for getting poop to go in the potty. And one thing that the book said is that children, it's hard for them because their whole life they've been comforted by the feeling of warm poo in their pants. Like they like the feeling
say
of it
anything about the feeling of adults that aren't related to a kid having to hear this crap? Quite frankly.
Well, we have a lot of dads that listen to the show and moms, so I just thought it would be relatable to talk about this. Like, there's nothing. We're all adults here, so there's nothing wrong with this.
Let me read for you the list of people that care about the bodily functions of your kid.
No, this is more of a.
I just read the list right there.
This is more of a teachable moment, though. I think everybody has gone through this with their kids at some point, where you face hurdles in potty training or just teaching in general as parents, and so that, like, Jake, you need to get past the point of it's just poop. Like, it's not that big.
Your
of a
kid
deal.
is how old?
He's about to be 4.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I've never had kids, but this seems like a little behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, we are behind the 8 ball.
Like, isn't this something? I mean, what next? Like,
generally,
are we? If we're doing a show, which we aren't going to be, but if we were doing a show 17 years from now, are you going to be spouting off about how your kid at 21 got his driver's license?
Generally, kids are fully potty trained by 3.5, and the peeing has been fine. He's been really good with that, like getting the pee in the potty, and Daddy, I have to go, and all of that. But for whatever reason, he's been scared about pooping. So we've just been going.
This is the most disgusting conversation ever. No one cares.
So we've just been going without pants in the house because we
without
just want to
pants.
Make sure. Well, we want to make sure that when he has to go, he lets us know. So then he goes on the potty. But he told me last night, he's like, Daddy, I have to go poop on the potty.
You're running around naked around the house?
Well, I'm not.
What is this? Eyes wide shut for 4-year-olds?
He's got no body. It's just in our house, Jake. Okay, we have the shades on the windows and all. Of that.
I should hope.
The privacy of our own home. But I actually, as a trick, in the book told me this. It said to take Play-Doh and then put it in your fist and then squeeze it out and show your kid that.
Okay, listen.
And then use words like
I got the stuff I need here. I'm going to
slide the poop out of the potty.
Okay, thank you.
Slide the poop in the potty. Use like action words.
What time are we doing this next week?
And then instead of just pooping on the
we
potty,
still
and
on for
they'll
next week?
envision that. So
Okay.
the book was very helpful.
I'm going to take my milk and move
Very,
on
very
about
helpful.
my way. Thank you.
So the point was there was a big poop in the potty last night, and it was a celebration in the Schultz house.
Now. We'll see you.
And we're just hoping that consistently he can pull that off. That's all. Okay. So he's not going to college in diapers. because I was worried about that at one point. Jake, this is your problem. You're not relatable to our audience. Like, these stories are relatable to
They just
our
told me to
audience.
come back in to make it known that I'm very relatable based on the fact that I would like to eject myself from this conversation.
It's just poop. It's not that big of a deal. And pee's sterile, so it's not, the urine is not even an issue.
Okay.
Like, if you're really in trouble, like you're in the desert, you can actually drink your own urine if you had
Wouldn't that be if you're in trouble?
That's worse than talking about poop. Your bad joke there?
I'm just saying, for what it's worth.
Okay, well, I guess we're ending the show then, since you can't handle it.
I'm out.
Since you can't handle this talk.
Sorry, I forgot my
You can't
mask.
handle adult talk. All right, well, thanks for listening to Query and Schultz and tuning in.
Okay.
Maybe
right.
we'll see you next time on ISC Sports Network if we can be adults about it, but apparently some of us are too immature to do this show.
Okay.
So hopefully that maturity level increases when we come back next
I'm
week.
trying to keep the program sterile.
We'll see.
We'll see you.
Thanks to our crew and everybody here at ISC Sports Network. We'll see you next week, guys. Bye.
Indiana Dairy Farm, long workdays stretch into more labor after sunset. A newborn calf needs watching. Barn needs cleaning. Tractor needs some handiwork for tomorrow's tasks. Just like in your own home, the day's chores are never done until the family beds down for the night. Dairy farmers and their families share the same dream with all of us, that what we all do is worthwhile. Bringing to market pure, safe, and healthy dairy foods is what they do. From Indiana's dairy families to ours every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. High school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.